In the bustling city of Baghdad, where merchants filled the markets with the scent of spices and scholars debated beneath the arches of ancient madrasas, there lived a young man named Bilal. Bilal was known throughout his school as a brilliant student. He had a sharp mind, a quick tongue, and a remarkable memory. Whenever a teacher asked a difficult question, many students would quietly turn toward Bilal, already expecting him to know the answer. Yet there was one thing Bilal could never find the words for. He could debate with scholars. He could recite poetry. He could speak confidently before crowds, but he could never speak openly to his father. No one understood why, not even Bilal himself. His father, Abdullah, was a humble craftsman. He wasn't wealthy, nor was he highly educated. His hands were rough from years of work, and the desert sun had carved deep lines into his face. But everything he did was for his family. When Bilal was young, Abdullah would wake before dawn to work long hours so his son could study instead of laboring beside him. He sold possessions he cherished to pay for books. He skipped meals when times were difficult. Yet he never spoke about sacrifice. He simply carried it silently, and somehow that silence became a wall between father and son. As Bilal grew older, he admired his father more and more. But whenever he tried to express it, something stopped him. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps it was fear, or perhaps some feelings become so large that words seem too small to contain them. One afternoon, Bilal sat beneath the shade of a date palm with his closest friend, Aram. The two friends often shared their deepest thoughts together. Aram noticed that Bilal seemed troubled. "You've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes, he said. "What's weighing on your mind?" Bilal sighed. "My father." Aram smiled. "Your father is all you ever think about." Bilal looked away. "That's the problem." Aram waited. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Bilal said quietly, "I don't think I've ever told him how much he means to me." Aram raised an eyebrow. "Then tell him." Bilal laughed nervously. "If it were that easy, I would have done it years ago." "Why?" "I don't know." Aram thought for a moment. Then he said, "Sometimes we fear speaking to those we love most because their opinion matters more than anyone else's." The words struck Bilal deeply. That evening, after returning home, he sat alone in his room. A small oil lamp flickered beside him. Several times he picked up a piece of paper. Several times he put it down again. His heart raced. His hands trembled. At last he began to write. He wrote about the sacrifices his father had made, the lessons he had learned from watching him, the respect he had always carried in his heart, the gratitude he had never expressed, and at the very end, he wrote the words he had spent years avoiding. "Father, I love you." After finishing, he folded the letter. The next morning, before fear could change his mind, he left it where his father would find it. Then he hurried to school. All day, he could think of nothing else. What would his father say? Would he laugh? Would he be uncomfortable? Would he ignore it completely? The uncertainty tormented him. Hours passed like years. Then, during the afternoon lesson, something unexpected happened. A knock echoed through the classroom. The teacher paused. Every student turned toward the doorway. Standing there was an older man wearing a simple robe dusted with sand from the road. His beard was streaked with gray. His eyes moved across the room until they found Bilal. The moment Bilal saw him, his heart nearly stopped. It was his father. The classroom grew silent. The teacher approached politely. "Can I help you, sir?" The man nodded. "I am looking for my son." His gaze never left Bilal. The teacher followed the direction of his eyes. Soon, every student in the room was staring at Bilal. Slowly, Bilal rose from his seat. His legs felt weak. The room seemed smaller. His chest tightened. This was the moment he had feared all day. His father stepped inside. One step, then another, until he stood before his son. No one spoke. Not the teacher. Not the students. Not even Bilal. For a few seconds, the entire world seemed frozen. Then Abdullah gently placed his hands on his son's face. the rough hands of a man who had spent his life working. The hands that had built, repaired, carried, sacrificed. The hands that had quietly shaped Bilal's future. Abdullah's eyes shimmered with tears. "My son," he said softly. His voice trembled. "I received your letter." Bilal lowered his gaze. He could not bring himself to speak. Years of unspoken feelings pressed against his heart. Then his father smiled. It was the warmest smile Bilal had ever seen. "I have waited many years to hear those words." The room remained silent. Even the students who knew nothing of the story felt something powerful unfolding before them. Abdullah continued, "But there is something you should know." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I have always loved you too." The words shattered whatever remained of Bilal's restraint. For years he had carried gratitude. For years he had carried admiration. For years he had carried love. And now all of it poured out at once. Without thinking, he stepped forward and embraced his father. The old craftsman wrapped his arms around him. Neither cared that dozens of eyes were watching. Neither cared about appearances. For the first time in their lives, nothing stood between them. Not pride, not fear, not silence. Only love. Some students wiped tears from their eyes. Even the teacher turned away for a moment, pretending to examine a book. When they finally stepped apart, both father and son were smiling through tears. Abdullah placed a hand on Bilal's shoulder. "I only came to tell you one thing." Bilal looked up. His father said, "I am proud of you." The words landed deeper than any praise Bilal had ever received. Not because they came from a scholar, not because they came from a ruler, but because they came from the man whose opinion mattered most. Abdullah nodded gently. "Now return to your studies." With one final smile, he turned and walked toward the door. The classroom remained silent until he disappeared from sight. Bilal stood motionless for several moments. Then he slowly returned to his seat. For the rest of the lesson, he barely heard a word. Not because his mind was distracted, but because for the first time in many years, his heart was at peace. And as the sun began to set over the golden domes of Baghdad, Bilal realized something important. The hardest words to speak are often the ones that matter most. And sometimes, a single act of courage can heal years of silence. For while fathers and sons may struggle to express their love, the bond between them often runs deeper than either one can see. And that is why, long after that day had passed, the people who witnessed it remembered not a lesson from a classroom, but a lesson from the heart.